Welcome to Mineral Wealth. Today, again, we are joined by David Stein, and a series of these videos are going to be focused on education, and it's for all of our benefits. We never stop learning. And I think I want to just come right out and ask David, what is the big difference between the equity markets at large and silver stocks?
That's a great question. Because at the end of the day, we tend to obsessively look at the silver price, which there's nothing wrong with that. I do that too. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's a small universe of silver related mining and exploration companies out there that sort of have exposure to silver. But ultimately, silver is a commodity, and it gets there's a physical trade and a paper trade for it. And then stocks are ultimately they're stocks. So the overall equity markets, what's happening to the overall equity markets affects whether or not your stocks will go up or down. People obviously need to put money into their account, buy something for a stock to go up, and vice versa when they need to cash out, when they need to pull money out. That's tends to be the reason why stocks go down, again, at large. And we could be talking about Microsoft, or we could be talking about my company Kuya, and everything in between. At the end of the day, that's the push and pull that's happening in the equity markets all the time. And the other factor that affects us in the mining industry a lot is something that would be like sector rotation. So not only do we need to worry about whether or not people are investing or not investing at all in the stock market, but we also need to know where their money is going. So, for example, investors could be adding to their positions in the stock market overall, but if they're only buying the big 7 tech companies, okay, then obviously, mining companies out there, big and small, don't really see much of that, if any of that money trickling towards them. So that's another factor. Now, these things all change in time. The markets are, cyclical. That's not a euphemism or a cliche. It is what happens. And money moves around because eventually things will get too expensive over here, and then people will chase returns over here, and then the money will move, right? And that, we have not seen that happening yet in the mining sector, at least the precious metal sector, I should clarify, for quite a while. But, it will happen. The fundamentals support it, and it will happen ultimately, eventually. And obviously when it does, you'll start seeing the prices going up, en masse.
And most of our subscribers are avid and fierce stackers of silver.
Right.
And they do so, to fight against the future risk of being tethered to a US dollar that has sort of a toxic orbit of debt. And there's some other, we may believe as a mindset, some financial repression or tyranny. Now, what would you say? Let's just say I'm a stacker and I've only done that, but I'm starting to believe that there may be another way to play silver investing, and have been told that mining stocks often have a better potential versus the security or conservative play of just holding bullion, under your mattress. What would right. How would you educate someone on how to get started or what to look for?
Well, first, let me address the reason why you might want to invest in mining stocks in general, or silver stocks in general. And I mean, the reason is that if your investment thesis is that silver is going to go up, you may, I won't say there's no guarantees in life, but you may be able to make a lot more money buying mining stocks than buying silver itself. I'll just give you an example. So let's say the silver price, let's round it up to $25 right now to make the math easy. And let's say it doubles to $50. So, and you bought a whole bunch of silver, and let's throw out the premiums for a minute, just say it goes from 25 to 50. That's 100% return, which is great. That's a great return, no question about it. Hopefully over not too long of a time frame. However, a mining stock, silver mining stock, in that same time frame where silver price is going from 25 to $50, could go up realistically 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, depending on a lot of the other factors. Bigger companies won't go up as much because they tend not to have as much leverage. They already have a higher valuation today, whereas the smaller, tinier, riskier companies tend to have a lot more upside. But that's the reason why someone would consider investing in mining stocks, because if you get the thesis right that the silver price is undervalued and it's going to go up, then you can make 100%, or even if you put 10% of that money into a junior mining stock that goes up 10 times, you've basically doubled your return. Okay. So it all depends. Everyone's risk tolerance is different, and they need to factor that in. But if that is the reason why you would consider doing that, obviously, because silver goes up. You're right. Your thesis was right. You want to make as much money as possible. That is a way to do it. It's to invest in junior mining stocks, or mining stocks in general. Silver, now, when we look at the universe of silver companies out there, there are none that are really huge, that are in the tens of billions of dollars, but there are some in the billions, single-digit billions, and then they go right down to microcaps, which would be, let's say, under 50 million market cap. So, and my company Kuya would be in that category as well. So, so if you are, lower risk tolerance, but you'd still want to look at mining stocks, you'd probably want to look at the bigger ones, or also an ETF, which owns a basket of companies. They're going to also tend to own a basket of bigger companies as well, because frankly, it's the only way they can trade in and out of them. So that's sort of a way to do it, to sort of dip your toe in the water. And then as you get more into it, you might want to pick a company, a smaller company, and look at it and potentially go for a much higher return, because those bigger companies will not give you as big of a return as a small company would. But on average, every company is a case by case. Every situation is different. But on average, if you invest in a company like, let's say Fresnillo is, I think, the biggest silver company out there by market cap right now. They're really like 50-50 gold silver, by the way, as well. That's another problem you get into when you invest in bigger companies, is they tend to be more diversified in terms of their metal. So you're not getting as much silver exposure as you think you are. But let's just take Fresnillo. So Fresnillo, if they've got a $10 billion market cap today, you're probably doing really well if they get to 20 or 30. So again, you're getting 2 or 3x your money. I don't see them going much bigger than that, whereas again, you could, a company that's a $20 million company today could go to 200 million, 300 million, quite easily. So, in a good bull market, which we haven't seen for a while.
Yeah, and I think we talked about earlier with you that we do see a setup for a pretty massive commodity bull run. And if you don't mind me putting you on the spot just a tad, if you're, let's say, I know one of the sort of the culture of raising money, you can't mine without resources for drilling and labor. When you go on the typical roadshow, How do you explain your discoveries to people that want to invest in your company?
Well, I try and differentiate us really from the other companies out there, because at the end of the day, again, especially in a bear market or in a tight market for capital,
Mm-hmm.
you're sort of competing with those other companies for capital.
Right.
So I try and differentiate, what's better about Kuya versus, the other companies out there. And I think we've got a number of strengths that make it somewhat easy to promote. The fact that our deposits are high grade is a I think really positive thing, because it ultimately means that you can mine at smaller tonnage and still make a lot of money. Whereas, a lower grade project, which there are many of those out there, you have to do an open pit. The capital involved tends to be, hundreds of millions of dollars or more. And obviously raising that and all the financial risk and dilution associated with that is much greater than a smaller high grade deposit. So I think that's a big advantage. And we have, not one, but two, high grade silver projects. Our original and still, flagship project in Peru was a mine producing up until, a few years ago. So that also, I think, lowers a lot of the technical risk. The fact that it was in production, it was, they were selling their constant, in this case, concentrate, still made from the ore. And so that makes it a lot less risky than, let's say, what we call a greenfields project. So like a brand new project, where you really have to test every little aspect of it and figure out if it's going to work and how much it's going to cost and everything like that. So a number of those steps that a greenfields project would have to take, we don't need to take. We can sort of jump the queue in that respect and get something going a lot quicker, and a lot cheaper as well, I would argue. So those are some of the advantages. I mean, we're diversified in 2 countries as well, Peru and Canada. I think that's an advantage. So, we've got really good exploration potential at both our projects, where we could easily, 2, 3, 5x our resources, just through methodical drilling. We know where to go, we know where the veins are. So those are some of the aspects I would play up for Kuya. And, again, it might be different for another company, but I think those are big strengths that we have that are worth talking about.
It's a good answer. I'm kind of intrigued on this Peru story a bit, having done some research in Latin America. And you said the mine had been up and running till recently. And when you say the concentrate, the ore, how far do you have to take it to get to, let's say, a metals broker that's in a place where they traditionally are buyers, or they already have that infrastructure set up? Can you let us know the journey of that silver?
Sure, the logistics, yeah.
Yeah, let us hear the logistics, just so we can kind of say, if we had to go work for Kuya Silver for a month, what would we be doing, if we didn't have a white collar job? What the journey of the silver itself?
Before that's a great question. And before I explain it, let me just say that, for really gold and silver,
okay,
there's 2 ways to sell your product. And it depends on the mine. It depends on the mine and the metallurgy, which is basically, how you get the metals out. It's the science behind and the engineering behind how you get the metals out. So there's two ways that you sell your products. One is a concentrate, which is what Bethania, the mine in Peru, does. I'll come back to that. The other way is like what we call a doré bar. So doré bar is a impure but almost pure gold or silver bar that you can actually produce at your mine. And then you would send that directly to a refinery, where they would take it from, let's say, 92% that you produce at the mine to 99.9% at the refinery. And then you can actually sell it as real, as a silver saleable product. But obviously that doré is worth a lot at the mine as well. So, so some mines do that. That's gold and silver only. And then some do concentrate. A concentrate is basically what you're doing is you're concentrating the actual minerals that contain the metals in them to be as pure as possible, because they're very valuable, and you're only going to then ship those to the in this case a smelter, which is sort of the step before a refiner. So you're going to ship that concentrate to a smelter somewhere in the world. Could be locally, could be in Asia, could be anywhere really. And they're gonna then separate out the metals and basically get it ready for refining. So in our case, before we got involved, they were producing two concentrates, a silver and lead concentrate in one, and then also zinc concentrate as a second concentrate. So what you would do then is you would mine your ore at the mine.
Okay.
And then if you have a mill or a plant, same thing. At the mine, you could make the concentrate right there. Or in the case of the prior owners of this mine, they actually trucked that concentrate nearby to a third party mill, where then they produced the concentrate there and just pay them a fee. That's called toll milling. So they still produce the concentrate, the two concentrates, so the silver, lead, and the zinc, and then they sell them, they ship them. Now, in the case of Peru, every country is a bit different, but most of the action happens in Lima, and outside of Lima, there's a port city called Callao, right outside of Lima. It's actually where if you fly into Lima, it's where the airport is. So Callao is the port where all of the concentrates go all over the world. And of course, Peru is a huge mining country, so there's a lot of activity going on there. They do have one domestic smelter, but the vast majority of the product will leave Peru and go to Asia, North America, or Europe.
Okay, then the smelter, therefore, is in a region that's probably closer to the refiner.
And closer to the end user, yeah. In the case,
okay.
Think about Asia. There's quite a lot of smelters and refiners in Korea and Japan, and of course they tend to be the end user for a lot of these metals, as well as China.
So I think this is important, and I'm glad you're educating myself and by proxy, as well as our subscribers, that a lot of people I think that miners have relationship with the mint. That you're basically saying that your concentrate goes to describe the metals broker job, in this case, in that port city outside of Lima. So I'm guessing these are people that are they metals brokers for only silver, or since Peru's such a big, there's a lot of copper there as well, are they just sort of specialize in buying concentrate? Is that right?
Yeah, so it's actually a huge business, and it's how the company, for example, Glencore, which is one of the biggest metals and mining companies in the world still to this day, it's how they got their start, and they're probably still the biggest metals trader in the world. And then the second biggest is another kind of household name in the mining business, which is called Trafigura. They're a private company, but based out of Europe. Glencore's a public company. You can actually buy their stock. So Glencore and Trafigura would be like number one, number two, and then there's quite a few. There's dozens of mid-sized and smaller guys that do the same thing, and basically, yeah, they'll buy the concentrates. Sometimes they'll blend them with other mines to create a more valuable product, and then they'll ship them. They'll have the relationships with the end users and the refiners and all that, and they'll basically take care of all those logistics for us. So it's a pretty important part of the supply chain, and in the case of Peru, again, I would say the vast majority of the metals trading business by dollars is actually copper. So we are not part of that, but there's still a lot, there's still a lot that goes on in silver, lead, zinc, and gold concentrates as well as or part of other concentrates. So those 5 metals are going to be probably the top 5 in terms of concentrate sales in Peru. But yeah, copper is a much bigger business. So we're just like the little brother of copper as far as the metals business goes.
So I think the point I'm trying to make is that the headache isn't yours in terms of what's going on with, like, for instance, there's a lot of chatter about that the American Silver Eagle has to worry about contracts between the mint, the US Mint, and Sunshine on who produces the blanks. And it's like, I think that it's important for people to understand that the headache is over for you once you offload your concentrate to the metals brokers, and there's plenty of them for you to work with. That's it. I'm guessing they did.
Yeah, that is correct. In general, once we deliver our concentrate, we're done. We get paid for it, and we're done.
Right.
What happens to it after that? Although we obviously are very heavily invested in the silver market, we want the silver price to go up. We want people to get their coins and bars, but we kind of lose. We get paid at that point, and it's out of our control what happens to the concentrate after that.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I would say a farmer doesn't stock the shelves at Whole Foods or Giant Eagle, or and I
correct.
think it makes
very good analogy. Yeah. Now, if you produce a doré bar, which we would likely be doing at our Canadian project, which is called Silver Kings, when or if we ever get it into production, we're obviously, we're exploring it and developing it with that plan in mind. The metallurgy is different there. So there we actually have silver metal as part of our ore mineral assemblage. So we can separate that out and actually end up with silver doré bars there, which is very, very unique and very cool. So there we would skip the refining. We'd skip the smelter step.
Okay. And
go straight to the refiner, which, again, we can go. There are refiners all over the world, but in all likelihood, we'd probably keep it in North America just because it's likely easier and cheaper for us. There's a few in Canada. There's obviously a few in the US as well, and that's. But again, once you sell it to the refiner, I mean, I guess you can negotiate a deal with them where you get your silver back. But usually, what you want to do is you sell it to the refiner. They take care of it after that. They pay you for whatever the mass of silver is, the weight of the silver that you're selling them, and then you get paid and you're done.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense that the further along the product looks in terms of it being a finished good, the advantage would be almost the distinction between your your Canadian operation and your Peru operation. Am I right in that you have that ability to get closer to the finished product in Canada?
Yeah, exactly. I do think it is an advantage. It'll definitely save us on the cost side. The fact that we can skip that concentrate step and go straight and have basically an almost pure silver doré bar. We also have no gold at that project. So typically when you're producing doré bars, you're going to have some basically what's the word I'm looking for? Basically like a blend, an alloy thing. Alloy is what I'm thinking of gold and silver.
Right.
And so the refiner has to separate those out. But again, in our case, we're gonna give them almost pure silver. So that's something that's very unique about the geology of the Silver Kings area. There are few, if any, projects like that in the world. I do. So I do think it will be an advantage, and I would say just, although I've been very, I would say, although I've been very, sort of flippant about, once we sell our product from the mine, we're done. With that being said, I do have to say, I do like what First Majestic has been doing the last number of years with sort of taking aside some of their silver and making coins and bars for investors, and sort of doing that as a little bit of a side business. But I think that's been very good and effective to obviously get silver in the hands of investors with low premiums, and I think it helps their company. It helps the company as well. They probably don't make a lot on it, but it helps promote First Majestic. It gets silver in the hands of silver stackers, with I think pretty reasonable premiums, and it gets it off the market. That means that Samsung can't have it for their phones or whatever either, right? So it ultimately helps push the price up too.
Yeah, I'd agree. It is great branding, and I've ordered from them, and they even answer the phone and talk to you. So it's really, I'm not saying everyone start calling First Majestic, but the customer service is above average. I think that's all we have time for today, David. And again, we're so grateful to have you on Mineral Wealth. And we do, David had some suggestions. We're always thinking of ways to improve. And we're going to be taking some questions from the Reddit community and Twitterverse, as well as through Substack. And we may just put David on the spot next week or take a week off. It depends on his schedule. But it's always great to hear from him. He's just he just has some acumen that none of us have, and that's why we wanted to bring him on a regular basis. So until next Mineral Wealth podcast, we will have a good weekend on y'all, and stay awesome.
Thanks.
Okay.